So to talk you through the screen as we've got here, I've got an app which is perfectly functional. That's the kind of template app that it builds for you, and it builds a state widget, which we're not going to look at for a little while yet. But the state is how we manage in Flutter data that changes. The other one then is a stateful widget, which is something that has a state. I'm just going to get rid of all of this straight away. We'll start with a stateless widget. So we'll call it my homepage just for simplicity. And one of the reasons that I like IntelliJ is the autocomplete. If you start typing stall, then you'll get a stateless widget, and I'll call it my homepage. Flutter is based on widgets, which if you're used to something like React Native, it's a similar kind of thing to that. But if you're used to Android or iOS, it's quite a different thing. And widgets, I suppose the most comparable thing in Android is views, but they are quite different. I'm going to just demonstrate here a sort of hello world application. So this is Dart language. So I'm going to create a final string called title, and I'm going to create a constructor from that. And as you can see, this is how that's going to get passed in. And I'll just change this text to say hello world. And I'll get rid of this text just for readability. So the first line here is the main method. This little syntax here is shorthand. It's the equivalent of doing an equals in Kotlin, but it's basically the equivalent of this, open brackets, close brackets. It's quite Java-y, the syntax for Dart, if you're not familiar with it. If I run this now on my emulator, and I go over to it, see nothing. So we haven't actually used the text yet. So if we first of all add an actual text view here, which is not called text view, it's called text. We're passing that title. We should just see a text view saying hello world. So the reason it's black and it doesn't have any themes is that things generally need to be wrapped in a scaffold. You can see it's up there, and a nice thing in Visual Studio again, we can just wrap things. So on a Mac I'm pressing Option and Enter to get this, not that. In Flutter Inspector, Outline even, you can also add, if you click here and then you look, you've got some basic options here. So this one is center, or wrap with padding, this one's center. So I can add a center there. And then if we go back to that, you can see it's in the center. So some of the other things that we can add to the scaffold, we can add an at bar, and that has added an at bar. If you look at the at bar, it takes some different thing, and one thing that you'll see quite a lot is the ability to pass other widgets into it. So we can add a title field, which is itself a widget. So if I add in the widget body, no, title, and pass in title, which will be a text widget, and we can see hello world is the title. Just one little thing that you might have noticed when it creates them automatically, we put trailing commas at the end of it, and that helps the formatting. The formatting does get important because this can be quite heavily nested by the time that you're finished with your views. So one thing that you've been seeing so far is the hot reload function, and I'll just show you this happening in real time. So if I say change this to be goodbye world, as soon as I hit save, it refreshes and it's refreshed the title and the text there. So it's something that makes developing in Flutter a lot faster than usual, is that you don't have to recompile the code. It all runs really quickly. Basically, as soon as you save it, it can refresh. Sometimes just walk you through quickly the project structure. So most of the apps that we live in this library here called lib. I'm going to create a package here. This is similar to sort of Java packages, and I'll create a Dart file. If I can find it. You might notice that the files have got underscores and all lowercase. That's kind of the setup. And what I'm going to do here is, this is basically the class which describes an account. So we can have a list of accounts, and then each account is made up of the account data, has a currency value, which is of type supported currency, and that supported currency has an ID and a name. It also has a balance, a UID, the provider, and a key. So I've also made a little function here called mock account. Again, this is basically the equivalent of this, sort of shorthand, but this is a more succinct way of writing that. In order to pass this through, what I'm going to do is create a widget down here. I'm going to call it account list item. And just to help me with testing, I'm going to pass this account list item as the widget that I display. So obviously it's blank at the moment. If I had an account data for this single widget item, so I've created a field, like a member field, and I'm going to create a constructor from that field. And for this, I'm going to pass in that mock account data, which, if I remind you, is from here. Cool. So nothing special so far. I'm just going to create a text just for some testing data, and I'm going to check that the account data has been populated correctly by looking at the currency value dot name. So this should say Bitcoin, and indeed it does. So you can see it's gone to the wrong side there, so we'll add some padding. By default it's added 8. What does that look like? Looks fine, but I want a little bit more, so I'm going to give it 16. Great, all so far we've got a text view, and that text view is being shown on the screen. One thing that I don't really like at the moment is the title bar, so I'm just going to get rid of that. And that kind of reduces the need for this too. And also that. We can experiment with some colors here. I'll do some more of this in theming, but I'm going to go for red as my primary swatch color. And as you can see, let's change there. Cool. So let's start with the UI that we're going to build. So it's good practice to hold your widgets in different accounts, different file view. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a little folder called widgets. And inside this widgets folder, I'm going to create a file called account title. And that's going to be a stateless widget account title. You can see from my Java and Kotlin that I've accidentally called that account title, and I'm going to rename it to account title in order to follow the convention. The imports here normally just use widgets rather than anything less generic. And again, I'm going to basically take this, I'm just going to have the title. And you know to import that file. And I want the account title to take the supported currency. So the title in this case is basically going to be the text Bitcoin, and then below that it's going to say BTC. So I'm going to create an account title for currency value, and then use that. You might see constructors like this, and you might also see them like this. So the difference is, like, if you name your constructor like this, it'll be a named constructor. Oh, got the wrong thing. And I'll show you the difference now. With this one, I have to do like this. Whereas if I took that out of brackets, they become ones that you can't construct without, so you have to burst them in like that. But it's nice to have named parameters, so I'm going to do this. And then we do an @ required, because that is something that we won't be able to build this widget without. This doesn't actually error if I fail to pass that value in, but it does give a lint error. So let's start with the next core element that we're going to be using, which is a column. So essentially, if you want things side by side, you create a column. A column takes a list of children, and you'll see the word child and children used quite a lot, and that basically means that you're passing in a widget into another widget, which is a really powerful feature of Flutter, and that's how you build up most of your UIs. So for example, if I want a column with the support currency's name, and then next to that the ID, this is what it looks like. So that'll do for now. I've got a column here with the name and the ID, one after the other. So it seems like a pretty good place to start for an account title. And then what I'm going to do is build up the next part, which is going to be the balance. So this is actually quite a small screen. I've done it again. Not down balance. And what I'm going to do here is build a stateless widget called balance widget. And this is basically to hold the balance. I forget what type the balance is, so we'll just double check. And the balance is a double, so we'll create a double called balance. Put a constructor for those final fields, and we're going to try and put that text into text field. Balance.toString. Cool. So it does seem like a bit of a waste wrapping that whole thing into a widget, but I have a feeling that in future, I know in future I'm going to want to put some extra stuff in that, change the color. So I'm just going to put that in its own widget now to save me that time later on. And now what I want to do is create a row. So a column obviously creates things horizontally, vertically, and a row will do things horizontally. So if I put a balance widget and pass in the support currency, sorry, the account data dot balance to this, and then we have a look, see what that looks like. So we've got the widgets here, and we've got a little space in between them. What we're going to do with this is the cross went to top, starting should bring us up to the top. So I want to put a spacer in between them, and that's what the spacer widget does. And we can wrap the whole thing in a padded of 16. With this, you might notice that the BTC is a little bit in the center and the Bitcoin's a little in the center, so we'll just fix that up by putting in which moves it so that they're in line. So there we have it. So we've got 3 widgets here, spacer, which is basically just the blank space in between, and it will by default just expand to fill all the available space. The balance widget, which is just going to display the balance at the moment, and the account title, which is a combination of the name and the ID of our coin. So that's pretty much it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we're going to start by loading in the image and then make it fade in. We're going to add a little bit more styling to the card's title, and we're going to add to the titles for the Bitcoin and the BTC, and we're going to wrap the whole thing in a Bitcoin, and then we're going to start adding a list.